I've seen some of your like posts floating around the internet as well.
Yeah, I've done a
But
few.
yeah.
Done a few.
Yeah,
So yeah,
cool to connect and finally meet you.
yeah. It's nice. Actually, I was going to because I know that actually after I think the call that I did see you on, I think that you were suggesting having calls to talk about the economics because there was, you know, we were talking a bit about the economics side of it on that call.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously a lot
Yeah,
of
I do
those
recall that.
details,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously are do come up. People obviously do wonder what the economics is likely to be, and obviously, some people obviously focus all of their attention on that because they're kind of like, how's this new reality going to work? I can't see it working. Just with everybody being, you know, with equal abundance and some people just think that people won't want to work, even though actually it'll be the opposite. uh,
I think it's one of those things that's like very experimental, and we'd like humans like tend to need some level of familiarity to have context, you know?
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
Again,
so
what we're talking about for most people. It's never even been something that they've even given any thought to ever. So it's like a real big shift. But if you depending on what videos you've seen of mine, I kind of I basically had like a knowing of GPMS well before I came across it. Like I kind of envisaged this kind of
yeah.
world. So for me, it was like very like instant. I completely connected with it. I know a lot of other
Yeah,
people as well have done as well and had that experience as well. And some maybe not had that experience, but they're still aligned with it straight away, and it's just a simple choice for them.
yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot of or not a lot, I guess I don't know how to say, but like a few or at least a variety of different interpretations and also embodiments. And like off the bat, like instinctually it sounds great. Who doesn't want to relieve suffering in the world, right? I think that quite a few people can get down with that idea. Um, and then like I have to like also check myself and say, hey, like I've actually never run a business before. Or an organization before, at that level. I know like what smaller scale organizations are like. I don't know what the stats are for the resources in the world. Like I actually just don't, I could look online to see a variety of different things, but there's so much info out there and so much that isn't out there that I get kind of lost in that aspect. I know there are people who could very well sustain systems ethically and with integrity and nobly, and do so already, that there are people with that type of composition and thinking. And then I also know people who will take whatever they can get and play it off as if they're doing something noble and it's not. And I mean, I've met people who a lot of people think are great humans who do this secretly, and they do it very, very subtly. And convince a lot of people that what they're doing is okay. And so I just see so many different variations. Humans are so diverse.
Oh
As
yeah.
as many things there are that unite humans as a people, there's also a lot of divergence that occurs too. And we're so huge, right? 8 billion people in this world. So I just kind of take a humble step back at this point, and focus on my own life for
Well,
now,
you've got
you know?
kind of understandable. Like you've got like what's going on with your health, and that's like going to take up a lot of your kind of energy because you're just drained of energy by it, aren't you? From what I gather, so
Yeah.
of course, you know it's true though that actually the energy and harmonics of actually really also knowing that there is a bright future for everyone will when it's something that people do embody, they will actually find that healing as well, because everything is energy and vibration and frequency and um, but it's also trusting and actually being open to alternative modalities, because we've always relied upon
Yeah.
the medical establishment and people to look after
Yeah.
us, and of course they do in many respects. For lots of people have done
Hmm.
amazing things. So, but because it's obviously the go-to, and yeah, that's why a lot of people would only trust those existing places, right, and people. But
Yeah.
it's obviously it's
Mhm.
coming more clear now. Like more people are finding benefits and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just to finish up very quickly on the GPMS thing. I mean, yeah, I basically run a carpet cleaning business here in the UK full time.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing for the last like 10 years, and I've got most of my clients are affluent people and have a
Hmm.
lot of money, or they certainly have a very
Have
comfortable
enough.
life. Yeah, a lot of what obviously I have become aware of obviously over the course of time is that there's lots of people that have a lot of money in their house and maybe things that you see like their nice cars and stuff, but actually they don't have very much,
Yeah.
spare cash still.
Hmm.
They stretch
Yeah.
themselves, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, I know I witnessed even my brother. He's done very well for himself. He's 14 years older than me, and he's now become quite wealthy. And again, his mentality, like a lot of people who've acquired wealth, are going to have that mentality where they don't think that other people should be able to have an equal level of abundance, because they haven't worked hard enough for it. They haven't, which
Yeah.
is just a primitive way of thinking, and it's also just how the system creates people to think that way. Really, it's actually a product of the system creation. Really, I think.
So that's interesting to me. I don't know, and I don't know if any of us can really say with certainty, like, um, um, in a reasonable way, which way that goes with the chicken and the egg, because it's such a complex thing. Like how much of our nature, can actually be transformed, and how much of it are we also like at the whim and mercy of? And it's a beautiful vision, to be open to new possibilities. Um,
Well, there's lots of things
and at
going
the
on. I
same
mean,
time, I
yeah,
think there's like, for example, like equality. Like, I don't know if we would actually ever actually desire equality. I think there's a certain, like, what is equality even, first of all? And why should there be equality? To prevent suffering or to try to ameliorate suffering, I think is a really noble cause. And I think most people would agree that we can do our best to make that happen. Um, but I don't know if equality is the right word, to be honest with you. I don't think I would want the floral pink shirt that another person is wearing and the exact food that
oh
another
no,
person is eating,
definitely not. No,
So,
no. You need to have that individuality, certainly, and uniqueness, and what some people desire and want is many are very oh, I can't even speak. Sorry, it's been a long day. Very minimalist in their what they want, and they don't want to have much. Whereas other people obviously do want to have more. But yeah, essentially, it's not just about the suffering, ending the suffering, because obviously that's the first focus point, of course, with bringing GPMS in is being able to put every human being in instant comfort, so no one's in lack and starving and without a roof and without healthcare and all the stuff that they need. But it's to actually basically eliminate the driving force behind crime and things like that. And you know, again, when it boils down to it, we don't know, nobody would know exactly how things would actually roll, like come phase 3 of the plan, once we get to 2
yeah,
billion agreements or more, whatever, worldwide, because although we actually sort of give examples of people having, everyone receiving $20,000 in the first month and then $10,000 every month thereafter. At that point, where you've got 2 billion, which would very quickly go to 4 billion, I would imagine at that point anyway. Um, the uplifting consciousness would be one where people would most likely already at that point probably be thinking, well, maybe we don't really need money, because if people thinking, well, if I'm realistically only going to have to work 40 hours, anybody that can work, that's fit to work, that's able to work, to contribute 40 hours in a month as opposed to a week. Some people would want to put more time in because they like working, enjoy the experiences that they have. And a lot of people would do more than 40 hours a month anyway, for doing what's essential. But, it's such a small amount of time. It gives 80% of people's time then to be spent with their community, with their family, supporting, the elderly, the disabled, but, just, being there for each other and looking after each other. And that actually is what's lacking, you know, with the way things are at the moment, which causes, again, I would say, like, kind of a lot of the issues around crime and stuff like that. And, and not being able to have experience, not freedom to be able to travel, because that's, people are restricted by what they can afford as well. So you kind of you're also tackling the reasons why a lot of people turn to drugs and alcohol, because most people turn to that, on an addiction basis, based on just, not being fulfilled and not feeling like they fit in, and having had traumatic experiences as well, which they're trying to, numb themselves of, all those different things as well.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these things are huge and very complex issues or situations. And I think that a lot of awareness and education and experimentation will be necessary and is also happening already. Um, and we'll just see how it goes, see what people discover. And we could like get into each one of those topics and they could be an entire conversation on their own. And I don't think I'm studied enough to even fully talk about it, to be honest. Like just that the like crime alone, for example, there's so much. Same with addiction. It's not just psychological. There are genetic components, and both are valid. There's psychological, there's genetic, there's socioeconomic, there's cultural, there's political. Like there's so many different layers, and so yeah, maybe that's something we can discuss at a future
Yeah, yeah,
date,
definitely. Yeah,
and
well,
also with some
yeah,
time where I've done more research. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
I just wanted to say to like kind of tune the conversation into our intention. So you gave me a nice like summary, or not summary, but intro before this call, a bit about your experiences with CBD and with health, and the journey that's brought you to a place where you're feeling like high on life, where you feel better than ever, which is awesome. I can see a lot of vibrancy in your face, which is really great. So I'm curious to learn more about CBD specifically.
Cool.
And understand like maybe a little bit more of the biology, if there's, or whatever
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you want to share in that regard. I appreciated that when you sent me the intro, you kind of talked about how it's great to be open to unknown solutions and treatments, to have the faith that they can exist, and to do the research, to use the mind to critically think about, what those possibilities might be like, in order to build a certain level of like systemization so that we can map ourselves, and also to be able to build trust, which is a huge component of any well-being.
100%.
So that was a really nice foundation that you laid down there, and I wanted to be known and
Oh, thank you.
available to anyone. Yeah, we do share this, so that's a good place. That's a good entry point, I think, into any discussion about um reckoning with, or with well-being. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. No, thanks for that. And
Mm.
yeah, it is really, really important to be open, to really being able to find something that actually will be very effective, in healing, because, outside of what you would receive just through going down the normal kind of process of going to a doctor and then getting a diagnosis or them prescribing some drugs, because as now millions, if not billions, but certainly millions, and I would say well over 100 million of people have had some sort of experience with alternative health treatments and nutrition and stuff like that. And, um, but if you're not open to it, then it really kind of, limits you, a, through perhaps actually following a course, a process, to actually take it in a way that actually is likely to benefit you, likely to yield the results that you're looking to get. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's a key element to it. but because the body and the mind is so powerful, literally, if you are closed minded about something because of preconceived ideas, whatever that might be, um, and a lot of people have still got this, kind of distaste in their mouth about anything linked to cannabis because they think, oh, it's this, demon drug.
Really?
Yeah, okay.
That's
And you're in the
interesting.
States, right? So of course it's
Yeah.
moved on a little bit further over where you are.
I live in the town that birthed this event called Hash Bash, which I think started in the 70s. I don't know if any Ann Arborites or who end up watching this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like an event where police allowed weed to be smoked openly on the streets 1 day a year and
Oh,
would
really?
not do anything about it. Yeah, so
Oh,
that's been going on for at least a few decades in this town I'm in. So yeah, I had
okay.
no idea that people would still be like, weed, what? Cannabis?
No, no. I mean, I mean, even like over here, but I mean, I know even in the States because of the propaganda campaign that kind of came on in like the 1930s, which was all done deliberately to basically demonize cannabis, so that basically because there was loads
Hmm.
of lobbying that was going
Wasn't
on.
it the Mexicans? You know, some racist
Yeah,
stuff.
they in the campaign they were kind
Really?
of suggesting it was like the Mexicans that were bringing it in, and that's where marijuana comes from, isn't it? It's the Mexican word. But yeah, I mean, without going into the history of it, because anyone can kind of read up about that sort of stuff. I mean, it's got a very interesting backstory, all to do with hemp and cannabis, but hemp and all of its, the thousands of different uses it's got. But that basically, the pharmaceutical industry really started to emerge kind of around about the end of Prohibition. Really, I mean, you
Hmm.
you actually had cannabis formulations that were sold on the shelf up until the early 1900s. So it
Um,
was known to be medicinal. But then, obviously hemp, which is where you get high concentrations of CBD and very small concentrations of THC, that
oh,
was
okay.
that was confused to be it was labelled as the same as marijuana, basically. So it was the Schedule One drug, and it was illegal, right? But yeah, essentially, yeah, I speak to people over here, and when I talk to them about CBD, and a lot of people have heard about CBD because they've seen it maybe on some shelves, or their friends have mentioned it, or they've read an article about it. They still refer to it very specifically as cannabis oil, which it is because it comes from hemp, which is a cannabis plant ultimately. But the cannabis oil suggests it's got THC in it, and but they kind of are starting to understand more that obviously it doesn't get you high, and therefore it's not a drug. There's no potential for addiction with it at all. And it for most people it's very very well tolerated, like a vitamin. But you could literally have significant amounts of it. I mean, they did trials with people with schizophrenia, and they were like giving them 1,500 milligrams a day, which is a lot. I mean, when I was taking it, and the people that sort of are very big American footballers that take CBD and stuff, for their pain and other inflammation, often will take maybe as much as 200 milligrams or 250 or even 300, but that's still
Oh,
a
if
very high
that's like, if
concentration.
that were, okay, I'm like trying to conceptualize how much that is. If that were in a paste form, like would that be like a teaspoon of the paste or like a tablespoon?
Depends on
Mm,
yeah the supply and the product, but basically they're
um,
you can get sort of 3,000 milligrams in a tube like paste form, and so yeah you just have like a kind of a one push of the syringe. If it's like a kind of syringe type
okay.
system, would just push out maybe 125 milligrams. So
Oh, geez. Okay.
but when people might take 200 milligrams a day or 250, I mean, and that's a very small percentage of people that take CBD as a health supplement, really, or to treat their problem. Um, it's a small number of people that would take that much, generally speaking, and they would probably have maybe a serving in the morning and a serving before they go to bed. And you can have it several times a day, and you can vary how much you have each time. This is the thing which makes it complex, is actually everyone's endocannabinoid system, which is the system it's interacting with in our bodies, is unique.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
you kind of got to find your sweet spot, which is difficult to do anyway, even for a lot of conditions. But some people, they hit that sweet spot straight away, or they get a benefit straight away, and they'll just run with that at that level, continuously. But some people, start with a small amount of about 25 milligrams, and they work up to 50 or 60 or 100 milligrams until they
Okay.
kind of find it effective. But it can be the
So
combination.
by sweet side, you mean the amount, not like the different types. I
Yeah,
don't know.
not the sweetness in terms of the actual product. Yeah, so the sweet spot in terms of actually hitting the
Yeah.
spot where you're kind of like getting your, oh, I feel better today,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
for whatever it might be. But some people have actually, for certain conditions, have taken it. And this is like I'm referring to somebody with, say, arthritis or osteoarthritis. Have actually taken it for like 2 months at quite a reasonable level and not had any improvement, and then on the third month it suddenly just worked, you know, and they almost gave up. There's quite a few people have found that, and when I was taking it, I had very quick benefits within about, well, I had benefits within 24 hours in terms of my sleep, and also slight sort of reduction in pain within the first couple of days, but then for a week
Yeah.
later I noticed the difference. But a year down the line of taking it consistently, I was noticing other improvements in my health. And a lot of people will report, their nails get harder, stronger, and their hair's like seems to be improving, their skin's better and
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Do you
So,
mind explaining a little bit, like what is an endocannabinoid system
okay.
or
So
cannabinoid system?
so the endocannabinoid system is basically, this was discovered in the 1990s by an Israeli scientist who was regarded as the godfather of cannabis research. And he basically identified this system of receptors in our body, which basically forms the largest self-regulating system that we have. So this system with these receptors, which are in, they call them CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors, are in all of our organs. They're in our like lymphatic system, our skin, everywhere basically. And I think it's the CB1 receptors is what THC tends to bind with, and that's where you get the high. But obviously, the CB2 receptors is what CBD is binding with.
Oh,
And it regulates everything. It regulates sleep, it regulates mood, appetite, hormone production, metabolism, everything. It's basically what keeps our body in homeostasis, which is the balance of all our bodily functions. So we naturally produce like what they call endogenous cannabinoids naturally. And this system, the endocannabinoid system of all these receptors, it starts to form as early as about the 16th week of gestation.
interesting.
So it's most likely key to like the development of like of all people. It's a big part of that.
Yeah.
And essentially, so they discovered this. He discovered this because when he was actually studying cannabis. This guy, he was really interested in the THC molecule. He was being funded by the American government to see what it was about weed that had this high effect, this psychotropic effect. They weren't really interested in CBD. They had actually isolated CBD in the cannabis plant back in the 40s, but because it didn't seem to be doing anything, they weren't really that interested in it. And then they isolated THC in the 60s, and then it was in the 90s that they discovered that there was these endogenous cannabinoids that we produce that bind with these receptors, and CBD was binding with these receptors as well. And that's where they thought, okay. And so they actually named one of our endogenous cannabinoids that we create naturally.
Hmm.
Like, what's it called? It's called anandamide, I think. Or yeah, I think it's called anandamide, which comes from the Sanskrit word ananda, which means bliss, because it's binding with the receptors that help with serotonin production and give you the good feelings of bliss.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
anandamide is a chemical that's in cannabis, or I don't
that's what
even
we
know if I'm
produce.
saying this right. Okay, chemistry was like the one class I did not pay attention in at all.
Nor did I.
Um,
Well,
yeah, so I'm so interested in it now. I just remember like it was right after lunch, and I was just like, so
yeah.
okay.
By the way, I mean, I know quite a lot about this, and I can actually talk on it quite well. Like in different areas, it will just start to come to me. I was doing some quite regular talks actually about it, quite some time ago, but I haven't done for a while, so I'm a little bit rusty. But it will start to flow back and come to me a bit more easily as we go on, no doubt.
Great. And if it doesn't, I won't notice, but But it's great to hear what it does flow out of you. So,
Yeah. So that endogenous cannabinoid system is key, and it's you know when I obviously made this discovery and I started researching, my research was following doctors in the States which were already sort of trying it out on their patients with different things, and hearing them talk about it and stuff, and also then looking at actual research, the independent research that you can look up online. You can put in, interestingly, almost any medical condition and CBD and independent research and find that there's been probably some research done. I say almost any. I mean, there's probably a lot of conditions, of course, that haven't, but actually, it's difficult. So it's easier to find conditions where they've done research with CBD to some level
okay.
than
Hmm.
not. But most of it's preclinical. So a lot of the research they did was on how it affected
Yeah,
the
diseases.
in mice and mice and rats and things like that.
Okay.
Because again, it's cheaper and easier to do that kind of research. Of course, the funding is being done by the pharmaceutical industry for post-clinical research, and of course that is not really in their interest unless they've got certain modality or mechanisms where they know that there's a possibility to treat obviously a condition, and they've got some good results already in mice models, which is with a synthesized version, because then they can patent that. So that's why people are taking CBD for so many different conditions, but there's very limited number of conditions really where they've actually said that they do believe that there's absolute probability that it's very helpful with those conditions, and that's things like pain, anxiety now for sure, and IBS and chronic fatigue. So like but again, the preclinical science actually in all cases they're saying this looks extremely promising, even with cancer. Research studies they've done, like more study needs to be done. But of course, the trials that they're doing, are always limited in terms of their scope. So they'll
Yeah,
basically they won't necessarily really test for a long period on a wide range of people, and they won't sort of increase the level of CBD, and they've made lots of assumptions. You see, I've kind of been able to draw some conclusions to certain things that other people haven't through my own experience of using normal cannabis and understanding that for quite a few years on its how it worked with me. They say that CBD, um, there's a number of people that CBD doesn't seem to work for at all, doesn't seem to have any effect in at all. And I'm not sure I completely believe that, because we all have these receptor sites, and I know that with THC, if you have enough of THC, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get stoned. you know. So the question is maybe that some people have a very big deficiency with CBD, and they have to take a lot of it for a very long time for them to nourish it to the point where they're calibrating that system and they're actually going to get a benefit from it. But that,
that's
that seems to still
interesting.
be quite a small number of people. But again, like
Yeah,
even with where they have done studies on people with pain, pain is a very complicated thing to obviously manage. If you can solve pain, um, you know, for everyone, then that would be like absolutely amazing. But
yeah.
essentially, again, they kind of limit it. They haven't sort of done sort of really big enough studies, I think, to sort of really fully understand it in a lot of areas. And by the way, if we time out, we can create another
Oh,
room
okay.
and then we can
Okay.
jump. But yeah,
Okay.
I will go off on a tangent, so feel free to interrupt me.
Yeah. I'm curious what your experience or understanding is of how it might influence things like traumatic brain and spine injuries. Um,
Yeah. So I was going to ask you actually. So what do you mind sharing what's happened with you and when this happened and that sort of thing?
yeah. Um, okay, we got 9 minutes. Um,
Is that better to start in another start in the new Zoom? Do you think? Did you want to ask me anything else, which we can talk about first, and then go into that
sure.
in
Yeah,
the
let's
next
do
one?
that. Um, so this is getting into dicier territory, and I really just don't know much at all about this, but um, mm, why do you think that this isn't being studied more widely and with more breadth? Um, and I know that like a lot of people like to immediately say, yeah, it's because the pharmaceutical companies are blocking it. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's a
I,
key. Keep
yeah,
go on. Sorry, you're gonna add something.
yeah, well, I don't, I neither deny or doubt that. I'm kind of in this neutral area where I'm just like, I really don't know how I could even tell. So I'm curious what you've read about that and what
Okay.
has been compelling for you.
Okay, so basically, firstly, it's important to know that the pharmaceutical industry, certainly up until before COVID, was in serious financial trouble.
Really?
Drugs, yeah. They're losing a lot of money because they have claims, that are made. It takes them 15 years to produce new drugs, with the
Hmm.
length of the trials that they would be doing and all the rest of it. And it costs typically $5 billion to produce one drug, in a 15-year period
Oh,
before it's
wow.
actually going to market and they're making money. So they obviously get this funding, from outside places and people within the industry to obviously create these drugs. And then once they come into market, they make obviously some good money, but it's just a lot of loss that occurs before that even happens. Um, Unfortunately, the business model of pharmaceutical industry and medications, it relies upon people remaining sick,
Yeah,
because that because of how much money it costs to bring drugs into the market. It was obviously got to be profitable, and of course, the whole way about capitalism, it is about making as much profit as possible. And it is sad but true that, of course, to have people that are going to continuously be maybe able to survive with what they've got, but actually rely upon having that medication over and over again and spending more money on it all the time, is what props up the industry and has propped up the industry. Um, if with CBD, basically it tackles health problems at the cause rather than at the symptom, and it doesn't just improve your health in one area. Therefore, it's improving your health in many areas. And so, actually, with CBD, it's as been stated by some specialists, medical specialists, who are like heart surgeons and brain surgeons have said this, that basically CBD and cannabis is probably one of the most biggest and most important discoveries in medical in medicine. It will
mm,
probably save more lives than one said it would save more lives than um, sterile surgical technique. In terms of how many people has that saved, cannabis will basically be able to save more because it's actually ultimately able to prevent you from getting the disease, because
mm,
most diseases are based on inflammation, and it's very anti-inflammatory. Most diseases can also be stemming from stress. Well, it de-stresses you. It helps you sleep, and most chronic diseases can come on because of bad sleep. Those things are very much linked anyway, right? Um, and because of how it's regulating our system and it's regulating our hormone production and metabolism and all that sort of stuff, it's relevant with how effectively our body is processing other nutrients from food, even.
mm,
So once you actually regulate that system correctly and you're nourishing that system, you're getting great sleep, you're less stressed, you feel good, right? That promotes a natural healing in the body, which means that you're not going to get sick anywhere near or even maybe at all. If you've got more energy because you're getting more sleep, which you do, fine with CBD, it helps you sleep, but you actually get more energy, and that's because you're getting better quality sleep and feeling better. You become more active, and being more active also promotes healing in your body and all the
yeah,
rest of it. So CBD, if they actually promoted it, which they should be doing to everybody, they should be saying that everybody should be having CBD as a vitamin, a nutritional supplement. That's what they should be doing, because that would really truly protect the people worldwide of disease. If they did
I
that,
have a side note question. Oh, yeah,
oh,
I'll let you finish. Oh, is there a difference between CBD and cannabis paste? Because I've tried cannabis paste before and I nearly had like a psychotic breakout. It was so intense. Um, so I'm
well,
wondering,
depends on what. So yeah, so you have CBD oil and you have CBD paste, but if it's a cannabis paste, then does it have THC in it? And if so, how
okay,
much? Because it's the THC that has the psychotropic effect. You cannot have a psychotropic effect with CBD, even if you had
okay,
10,000, milligrams of it.
okay,
Um, so yeah, it's basically got no psychoactive effect whatsoever. In fact, the reason why they're trialing it on people with schizophrenia was because it's an
Hmm.
antipsychotic, ultimately, naturally.
Okay.
Yeah, more
Okay.
effective than antipsychotics without the side effects.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so, so that, yeah, you can. The paste is just normally a more concentrated version of whatever it is, whether it's got a mixture of THC and CBD. So again, we can talk a little bit more specifically in a minute or later on about the actual
Hmm.
different types of CBD oil, because you get CBD isolate, which is just CBD and nothing else. Because very quickly, I'll mention that in the cannabis plant, you basically have 104 or more actually, but there's at least 104 known cannabinoids, which include CBD and THC. There's 102 others basically, but they're in very minute amounts. Those cannabinoids, but they're all basically like, they also have essential oils, like, in the plant as well, which have obviously power. That's like the flavonoids and things like that. But CBD and THC are the most active compounds. They're what's found in the highest concentration in the plant, basically. Um,
Okay.
like I say, in
Thanks
hemp,
for explaining that.
you have high concentration of CBD, very small concentration of THC. You could smoke hemp, the plant, and you would not get high from it because it's only got trace amounts of THC in it. But the marijuana plant's
Okay.
got high concentrations of THC, very small amounts of CBD. And so that's why a lot of people say, oh, I don't need CBD, I smoke weed, I smoke marijuana. But actually, you're not really getting much, mostly, unless you get a very specific plant that's grown with a good amount of THC and CBD in it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we got 1 minute 44. Did you have a quick question you wanted to ask? Just
No, just if you wanted to, you were in the middle of explaining how you think if everyone had some of that consistently, that's something
yeah,
beneficial might.
it would end the pharmaceutical business would go out of business, because you would have an improvement in health that was just so immense that actually that's why in America, like already where you're further ahead with the use of this, so many people manage to move off pharmaceutical medications onto CBD and
Yeah.
cannabis products, as well as
Yeah.
other things. It's already having an effect. It's been slower in the UK because we have like free prescriptions, or not free, but like a prescription of most drugs is, purchased for £8 or £15.
Oh wow.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
but for CBD, if you're to use it properly and you've got various different conditions, some people might need to spend £100 or even more than that, and that's quite a lot of money for a lot of people, and
Yeah.
they don't value their health, and if it's not being promised to be able to deliver it, then they're not going to commit to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to mention, yeah, that again, I could show you that there is this patent which was awarded in 2003 by the American government that is titled CBD, as an antioxidant, neuroprotectant, is
Mm.
useful to treat Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other neurological conditions, um,
Yeah.
and other cardiovascular conditions. And ultimately, it begs the question then, well, the American government's patent, or has this patent in 2003. There's no answers or solutions currently coming from the pharmaceutical industry really for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So why aren't they just telling people to supplement? Because of course, anything that can benefit you as a treatment that's natural
Yeah. Hmm.
would suggest that if it can actually help you once you've got the disease, then it's likely to be able
Yeah.
to help protect you against getting the disease in the first place. So there's
Hmm.
enough evidence out there to show that there's lots of things out there that should be mainstream, should be promoted heavily to, even things like vitamin D, we know is obviously very powerful, and yet they still don't
Yeah.
emphasize it enough. So unfortunately, there's reasons why these
Yeah.
things aren't getting the publicity. But yeah, did you want to
Yeah.
go with anything there? Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit more about
Sure.
your
I can
situation.
share a little bit of I should probably start at my birth because I think that there is relevance. I was born 6 weeks premature
Okay.
and immediately taken into a metal container and driven across the city into and placed into a hospital an hour away, and was in an incubator for the first 4 weeks of my life, all bandaged, tubed, and wired up. And I think like the amount of human touch I got was like a finger. They would like poke a finger. through a hole and like rub my skin maybe once a day. Um, I know that my I was getting some breast milk somehow. Like maybe they were feeding it through a tube. I know that that was being transported over. So I think there are certain like de physiological developments that get disturbed when things like that happen. One, just being born 6 weeks early. I know that a lot of preemies are more susceptible to various different imbalances later in life. Some preemies end up fine, so I don't want to say that across the board, of course, but there is like compelling evidence that people who are born significantly premature, and 6 weeks is a lot of time, but there are babies who are born earlier and end up fine. Some babies who are born earlier and don't end up fine. Um, but there's compelling evidence that there are weaknesses that can develop later in life, not having that like strong foundation of
touch
um
and
and and this is like where I'm not like honestly completely sure because some people like to say that the baby will be born when it needs to be born, like that if there's a natural induction, like if the plug naturally comes out, if the baby like if the contractions happen, then the baby is just it's meant to be born and there isn't like a 40-week mark. I honestly don't know the details of that, but what I will say is that once I hit puberty, I had like insanely out of control experiences. um Very painful menstruation. I was like out that week, all week in bed. Extreme sensitivities to things like sound and light, touch, just kind of all over like a roller coaster ride. I think I thought that that was just like a female experience once menstruation started, but I learned that some women don't actually experience that much pain during their menstruation and don't go through like intense mood swings. So I also just had there was a lot of stress in my life at that time. Getting older, I continued to kind of experience difficulties regulating my body. It just like fainting, getting migraines, just a lot of dissociation, pain, shutdowns of random sorts that were all like not medically. There was no medical diagnosis for anything I was experiencing, and I was kind of desperate, by the time after all those years, because it was really disrupting my ability to function, to like maintain a job, to maintain relationships, because I fluctuated so much. And sometimes even just like going for a walk, I would need to sit down for the rest of the day and lie down. Um, I tried all sorts of medications. They didn't work. Um, I started getting really into breath work and yoga. Those started to like really help. But when I open to things like that, as well as Reiki and like somatic healing with a partner, whether that be like a tantric workshop or like a psychotherapy guided session, somatic session, things like that, I would start to experience uh an overwhelming amount of energy in my body. Some spiritual people might say I would zoom out of my body and just go into these like really high realms, but like um it felt like my whole body was on fire, and at the same time I was having like vision after vision after vision after thought after sound, like all these things were happening at once, and then my body was just like insanely reactive. So I was suggested fasting as a possibility to help kind of regulate my system. And by this point, it had been like multiple years of me barely being able to walk around for a day without being without like getting knocked out. So I tried it without doing my research, and that was a really big lesson learned for me because I don't think that someone who experiences as many highs and lows as me, as I was, or like as much variation in their experience of dissociation, depersonalization, disembodiment, should have really gone towards fasting first, because that often like makes people even airier. Um,
Did you find that?
Absolutely, yeah. I just like zoomed out of reality. And at first it felt really good. It did provide some relief. Um, but it was becoming unsustainable because I was just like really weak physically. Um, I wasn't getting stronger physically. I was feeling better, but I was getting weaker in my ability to like walk, pick things up. Um,
What kind of fasting were
so
you
part
doing? Yeah, how long was the fasting? Like, what period and how were you doing it?
Yeah, so this is gonna be a general template because I didn't mark it down uh day by day, but I believe so it was a progression of elimination. So before even I knew about fasting, what I first did was eliminate all processed foods, all meat, all dairy. And I did that for a few years. And then I think I started to go back and forth. I was introducing some processed food in my diet to compare, recognizing that I preferred not eating processed food.
How long
And
did
then
you test it for, though?
like 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah, so I was going back and forth. I still wasn't fasting. I had heard about fasting, but I was like, I'm trying to remember the exact details. I think like I was just so hungry that like
Yeah.
while I thought I was like I believed that fasting had benefited many people, I just like I didn't feel good not eating, so first I tried to just experiment with different types of food. Eventually like no food was digesting well. Um so I think I started to see how long in a day I could go before my first meal. And when I did eat, I would start with like a salad and then maybe a piece of toast, like whole grain toast, the like not enriched flour. I was very careful about trying to pick wholesome foods. Um, and then even the bread was becoming too much. And even the salad, I was like experiencing intense abdominal pain when I ate salads and feeling very dysregulated. Like I felt so much heaviness in my stomach and an inability to feel the rest of my body. Um, so I thought, well, let me go a day without eating anything at all. And it was better than the heaviness I felt. So I kept maybe for like a month or two, kept trying to see how long I could go without eating a first meal. It was probably like a day or a day and a half at the most, and then maybe 2 days. 3 months in, I think I started to do like 1 to 2 days, and then one day where I would have maybe one meal and a snack, maybe two light meals, and then I would do another 1 to 2 days fast. And that became my norm-ish.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, and then the next month, I think I went 3 or 4 days without any food at all and was excited that I could go that far because I was under the impression from what I had been hearing that we were not meant to eat. And that I had to go through this process of learning how to adjust my body. So I kept pushing myself to see what I could do. Um, I was noticing that I felt better drinking juice. So then I tried to just be more on the fruit end when I did eat. or try to focus on drinking juices. Um, I was still occasionally eating cooked meals like a soup or maybe a veggie burrito. Felt absolutely horrible when I did that. So I was further convinced that I should only eat fruit or only eat or not eat at all. And just really tried to limit the amount that I ate according to how I felt, to not cause any more discomfort in my stomach area or abdominal, intestinal area. Um, I think by 4 or 5 months in was when I was noticing that my body felt like it was disintegrating. Like I was very unsteady, um, very loopy in the head, like really unable to think straight, passing out. Um, my partner at the time like had to carry everything, had to basically just do any kind of practical functioning because I just like physically couldn't do it. Um, and I wasn't able to sleep by that point either. I was just like really raw and on edge. I was still on this path believing that I was detoxing, and then if I returned to eating, I would actually be causing further damage to my body. Um, and so I just needed to see the detox through. Now, what I have to say at this point, because it just keeps getting worse, I did not have any grounded understanding of what protocols might be necessary for fasting. The way I did it was so wrong. Um, from what I've read now, since this has all happened, there are like pretty extensive, like slow transitions that people are often recommended to try when fasting. And everyone's body is different, of course, and their ability to tolerate not eating. I have had an insanely fast metabolism, and for how like airy and neurodivergent I was, I think I really needed nutrients to like to
Mm.
stabilize my system biologically and chemically. Um, but I was just like so indoctrinated in this belief, in this like ungrounded protocol that had no legitimacy, to be honest. Like there was no proof. I wasn't following a specific protocol. I was just following like very general outlines and like the idea that if I were dizzy, it just meant I was detoxing, which like isn't necessarily true. Like dizziness can mean a lot of different things. But eating felt horrible, and I had forgotten at the time that I had just really lost trust in the process of eating. So I continued to eat less and less and also drink less fluids, fewer fluids, because it was starting to hurt to put anything down my throat. My nerves were getting so sensitive. Um, at this point, I was having like very painful headaches every day, and my whole body was going numb. Like couldn't feel it. Um, and there was a lot of other stuff going on psychologically. I was just incredibly confused and lost about what was real and what wasn't, and what was in my control, what wasn't, what was okay to do. Like, um, there were so many, the kind of like sphere that I was in was so focused on like doing things that felt heart centered, but my body was so dysregulated that I couldn't even tap into what a feeling of being heart centered was like. And so I also felt paralyzed to make any like practical logistical decisions because I just felt very alienated. And People are getting kind of upset at this point, really saying uh, some very nasty things. And I felt very pressured to get it together. And it was kind of like, I was kind of like really giving my power away to this belief that it was all mental, that I just needed to power through it and needed to I needed to just believe in myself. I just needed to believe in my power. I needed to focus, completely disregarding the reality that sometimes like there are biochemical aspects to our experience that like actually have nothing to do with our thoughts. They can often be highly correlated, but sometimes there really just is a biochemical thing going on that needs to be addressed. Um, and so I tried to force myself to move, to exercise, to do something that put a huge amount of stress on my body. Um, Obviously, I had been malnourished now for about 8 months, and my nerves started to contract, like spasm and seizures. Um, try to calm that down. I tried to do this breath work practice, was being told I was breathing incorrectly and needed to be more forceful, and that would fix things. And so I'm just like sitting outside, like punching my body basically. Like I contorted it in a way that was so dramatic, and so painful. Like really like clenching my muscles to try to create power. And as I did that, what ended up happening was this like electrical spark shot up my spine and into my brain and at the top of my head, and it kind of ruptured. Um, and After that, I had a series of seizures happening for about 2 weeks, and I had I didn't recognize it as a stroke, but I had at the time. But looking back at what occurred, I see now that I had two strokes where like I was paralyzed, couldn't like my face couldn't move, I couldn't talk, and there were just really strange, painful, uncomfortable things happening in my brain. Um, After that, a variety of different places in my body started to rupture, and it was the most pain I've ever experienced in my life. And it really just felt like whatever mechanism was being acted upon in my body was contorting and like just shifting in ways it shouldn't be shifting in. Like it's at this point, it's not like a really scientific way to describe it, but there was something very wrong with my body. I lost the ability to walk. I was having a lot of trouble talking, wasn't hearing properly, wasn't seeing properly. I actually honestly lost the ability to control my peeing and pooping at one point. I was terrified because I was also losing sensation in my body while this was all happening. Like one area of my body would swell and inflame, and then it would go numb. Um, and I finally started eating again after I think like 9 or 10 months of trying this more elimination style, restricted style. I slowly started with like some sips of soup and smoothies and worked my way up to other foods. And When I began eating again, the seizures and strokes stopped. I regained the ability to walk, to talk, to see, to hear, and like my motor function mostly stabilized. There's like one aspect of my motor function that hasn't come back online since this is March 2022. Um, but what has remained shut off since that period is my ability to feel a lot of sensory stimulation. So I don't get any rushes of adrenaline in my body. I don't like I cannot if I like slap my hand or like a needle hits it or I touch something really hot, I can sense that in the area that it's being like physically touched, but I no longer feel it moving through any other part of my body. Um, which is obviously not like a horrible thing, but it's just kind of showing that there's something in my body that has shut down. If I can't get dizzy, I can still feel like pain in my organs. If I like get hit really hard or I haven't slept in days, I can feel like my heart, getting pressure. Um, but I can't like feel refreshed or ease or restorative or nourished or love, happiness, joy, anxiety, sadness, anger. Like they're just those chemicals are not moving through my body at all. Um, so there's also an area in my brain, like I can feel where the activity has shut down. And sometimes I get this like glitch in my brain, like it's a very faint fizzle where it almost feels like there's something that's trying to connect that isn't. Um, Quite a bit of my eyesight is gone now too. Like I actually don't feel like I'm looking through. I can't like I don't know, maybe like some people have more of a connection to this others, but I used to be able to like feel my eyes. I could feel the surface of it in various different depths and layers, and like I could feel the connection that it had to my brain. Um, and there's a lot of that that's just diminished or not like that I'm just not aware of, just feels numb. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's been what, 15 to 20 months since the major shutdowns. Um, I've tried every psychosomatic thing that people have recommended me. Um, and I'm just looking for ways to like actually structurally re-stimulate or rebuild my body at this point. So
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a journey you've been on, and a very traumatic one, obviously, with that, and definitely because of what you've experienced, you'll be, of course, having an extreme lack of trust in your body's ability to heal. I mean, you'll tell yourself still, and you'll obviously to come where you are now. You've already come a long way from where you were at the worst point, right? So you haven't
Yeah.
lost that completely, but with that kind of trauma, of course, you're going to have blockages that you were experiencing, and so again, a lot of the health problems are just blockages, but there's also the possibility that because of all of that experience that you've had as well, that there will be certain things that you kind of are sure you sensed before, because you can often focus. I used to be, before I discovered CBD, I used to be a bit of a hypochondriac. You know, I would, well, we call it more health anxiety now, don't they? But, ultimately I used to feel different sensations in my body and then be certain that there was something not right with me, because I was sure I'd never felt those experiences before, and they weren't necessarily really painful. Sometimes I'd have pains, but it's be fleeting. But I would often be saying to people, oh, "Have you ever had this? Do you feel that?" And they'd often be like, "No, no, it's never happened to me." So I mean, there is also the as we know that there is things like phantom pain and stuff that obviously, like say an amputee can experience, because obviously with pain as well, you obviously get the creation of in neuro pathways of pain when you've got it for a sustained period of time, and your brain will send pain signals even if you don't have any inflammation in that part of the body. Like, so an amputee can feel pain in their foot, which they don't have anymore. So all kinds of things can go on there neurologically that can obviously also be confusing for you as well, and
Had
hinder.
any neurological activity that produced like a perceivable amount of sensation in my body, like in my body, not like just the touch. I would be honestly a little more hopeful.
Well, I
Although I'm not going to diminish the fact that like having random pain is not an enjoyable experience.
no. Well, I mean, this is the thing. So CBD. I mean, and obviously, I wouldn't want to get your hopes up and say, oh yeah, this is going to cure you and all the rest of it. But well, it is relatively unknown that the huge potential of CBD, and new discoveries are being made all the time, in terms of how it can heal people and things like that. Like even my mother, for example, who's 82 years old, her eyesight, started to deteriorate after she was taking CBD, or she thought it was. And she went to the opticians and they said, well, your eyes are actually improving. You need new lenses. That doesn't normally happen. What have you been doing? It's like, oh, I've been taking CBD. And the reason why we're kind of sure that it was a CBD that's improved her eyesight at the age of 82, twice it happened, was because a client of mine who his child had a genetic disorder and was having like 300 seizures a day and stuff, and was having operations on her brain, and in the end they actually removed so much of her brain that she died from that. But before that occurred, she her mother had got her CBD from Switzerland, and brought it in a very high concentrate one, and almost got arrested at that time for doing it, because it was kind of before it
Yeah.
was acceptable here.
Um,
But her daughter, who had this eye and really really severely impaired eyesight, her eyesight did improve after she started taking CBD. Um,
yeah.
it's having so many different functions in the body, and it does help sort of alleviate blockages and things like that. It helps repair the brain. It's the one thing. So, American footballers are now taking CBD, or wanting to take CBD. It was for a while like, now they can take CBD isolate because it won't show up on the drug test, because it's got no THC, no trace amounts of it at all. Um, but they're taking it to protect the brain during the sport and actually protect the brain after the sport, because obviously American footballers, they are now prone to getting Alzheimer's or neurological problems from all of the
Yeah.
repetitive concussions that they have. So it's a neuroprotector in that sense, and I think they found that it breaks down the plaques that can form between brain cells, which is what obviously occurs with Alzheimer's. In terms of blocking like the sort of um, function of the neurons and stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways that this will potentially help you. It will improve your sleep. You said that you kind of, you still have days where you don't sleep sometimes. Is that
I
right?
don't sleep well, yeah, yeah.
So your sleep quality, that's the first thing that it does, is it helps you kind of get, whatever sleep you're having, it helps you get better sleep. You have to find sometimes the right time for you to take it before you go to bed. Some people have reported taking it directly before they go to sleep, and then they found that they had too much energy. I normally would take it half an hour, 45 minutes, or even an hour before I go to bed. Um, and did you say that when you were smoking marijuana at one point, did you say you smoked marijuana and you found any benefit with that at all, or did you ever try that?
Hmm. Wait, what was the last part of your question? Did I ever
Did
say
you ever
smoking?
smoke cannabis? Did you ever smoke cannabis at any point, and did you find any benefit if you did?
Um, I had a lot of fun with it later in high school. But I found it quite ungrounding. Like it was a good experience for about a year, and then it just became very like it made it very difficult for me to be productive, so I stopped after
Yeah.
that.
Well, there's obviously generally when people smoke it recreationally, as I was abusing it, smoking way too much of it, and it was having other negative effects. So, but again, you could smoke, like you could have one puff or two puffs, but one puff is enough for it to have a medicinal effect without it actually causing you to be stoned and have a hangover the next day when you wake up feeling all groggy or anything like that. And
Man, not me. One puff sent me like zooming. That's why, like, with all these things, I'm like, man, I've been humbled so deeply about how unique people's biochemistry can be because things hit people differently. And yeah,
well, I can't now because I stopped smoking weed. You know,
yeah,
uh, really, I was doing it virtually every single day up until I was about 30, and then I kind of, started to kind of stop for decent periods after that, but still had periods where I would smoke it. But like now, if I actually rolled a joint and smoked it, if I have any more than a puff, like when I haven't had any of it for like, a long time, it's so overwhelming for me. I hate it. It's really uncomfortable, or I just don't like. Um, until it's because your body as well, when you're taking CBD, and the same with THC, basically your body produces more receptors the longer you're using it for. So those receptors, and then especially with THC receptors, are completely inactive after you stop using cannabis, right? And then of course, but there's a lot of them from me smoking all those years, right? In my brain, I've got so many of them. So as soon as I smoke, it just lights them all up in one go, and I'm like, whoa, and it's just not pleasant. It's just I just feel so uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, THC does have some potential neurological benefit, if used correctly for some people. But again, it's like some people. it works for.
Mhm.
Some people. That one guy said that basically anybody that had a car accident where they've sustained a head injury from that, he would recommend that they go home and they would smoke lots of weed, because of the neurological protection it would also give, from that.
Mhm.
But CBD actually does help repair the brain cells.
Mhm.
The fasting thing that you were talking about. So, I mean, now what are you doing with food now? How much food are you eating now?
Now I eat 3 times a day, and I'm
Oh,
on
sorry.
like a now I eat 3 times a day, and I eat fish, eggs, yogurt, fruit, veggies. I don't eat red meat or pork. I just never really have, and or chicken. It's just not something that I've ever. I tried it for like 3 years in my teens, and I ate it sparingly as a child. Um, but I don't digest it well. So um, yeah, I guess like a pescatarian
Okay.
diet.
Well, it's good that you're having fish. I mean, obviously you need to get omega-3. It's really important, which obviously you get mostly in fish. Um, but yeah, I mean, B12 and stuff like that. Do you supplement with anything for? Um,
Yeah, I take a bunch of supplements, and I got connected with a doctor who I really respect for uh his breadth of understanding knowledge, and he sent me a a robust prescription for different types of supplements. I can't fully remember what was on there, but they're on their way. Um, I think iodine. I remember seeing iodine. Um, and yeah, there's definitely omegas in the bees. I think I'm gonna try upping my bee
Yeah,
supplementing
there's
a
a
bit.
B vitamins, particularly do affect the brain function. So, two interesting experiences. My mum, she went into hospital. She had problems with her heart, and then she came out. They kind of managed to correct that issue to a degree and gave her medication. She came out, and then she had brain fog, right?
Mm,
And yeah, again, the doctors, they sort of weren't too concerned about that. It wasn't life threatening like a heart condition was, and I don't think they really knew how to remedy that anyway. And I looked up online. I thought, is there any sort of deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies that can cause brain fog? And it said B vitamins, B12 potentially could. So we went out and got some B vitamins and stuff, and also we got some mushroom pills, which are supposed to be quite good as well. Huh?
like the adaptation, not psychedelic mushrooms,
Not
but
psychedelic, no. I can't remember what they're called. It's something Maine, I think it is. Is
like
it?
lion's mane.
Yeah.
Um,
And
ones.
anyway, within a few days, she was fine. Her brain function. She was getting quite worried. She thought she was having early onset dementia because she was just couldn't think properly at all. And then
Yeah.
I got a really bad flu like at the beginning of the year after I twisted my ankle and that injured me in the stress. And I haven't actually myself. I mean, I'm talking about CBD. I haven't actually been taking it for the first time for a long period, not because I don't want to, but just because I couldn't afford it, because my financial situation declined ever since I had this twisted ankle and it affected my work, and then I got very sick for 2 weeks. And we just had slow work, so I haven't. I'm now getting to that point where I'm actually looking forward to being able to get some more soon because my sleep isn't as good. I know that for a fact.
Mm.
And I'm still good because I've got other things that are keeping me happy and feeling good. But yeah, essentially, when I was with this flu, like oddly, I'm really sensitive to sugar. I can't stand anything sweet. My brother and my sister are exactly the same. I can't even eat fruit. Most vegetables I find sweet. I do eat some vegetables, but I really do it just because I feel like I should have some vegetables. So I have to force myself. But the taste of water changed whilst I had, after I got this flu, and it went really sweet. And I thought, what's that about? And I thought, is there a deficiency? And again, it said a deficiency in B vitamins could cause that. And I didn't have any B vitamins, and I was 2 weeks to go out and get any, but I did have some Marmite, which is fortified with B12 and B vitamins. And
Yeah.
I took a big scoop of that, and instantaneously the taste of water went back to normal.
Wow.
Most people are deficient in at least a few minerals and important vitamins. So
Yeah,
yeah,
okay. So you told me, I think we left off with you telling me a bit about the ways that CBD can and has helped people. And I was wondering if, um, so you mentioned was your mom or a lady whose eyesight improved? I was wondering if you've heard of any other examples specific to like neurological conditions,
well, yeah.
things
I
like
mean,
Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
so yeah, there's been quite a lot of documented sort of evidence of people, giving CBD to people with dementia, and actually it's sort of, slowing the progress process. I mean, even things that, I mean, before I came across CBD, I came across TED Talks, a lady whose husband had Parkinson's, and he started to lose his personality completely with it. He was like, quite far going with it, and wasn't really able to sort of, interact and talk and engage, and there was no kind of humor with him or anything like that. And he'd sort of stopped being able to walk even and things like that. And she'd come across some, information to do with coconut oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride, um, basically being effective with certain people with Parkinson's, and she was at this point like, well, none of the medications are helping and he's declining. I'm going to give it a try. And she started him on 1 tablespoon of organic coconut oil, and then she upped it to, oh no, she started with 3 tablespoons, and then she upped it up to a total of 12 a day. So she was giving it to him on his toast and stuff like that, and different ways and means to get it into him. And she started to report like, a massive change in him. Like he started to be able to engage with her again and interact with her, and he was getting his humor back, and then he was even getting his
Um,
mobility back and all this sort of stuff. And she did this TED Talks about it, and then there was obviously, I think she had her own website as well, and I kind of looked at that, and there was about, a load of people that obviously had followed her, what she had been doing with people that, who obviously had family members or whatever who had the problem, and 50% of them actually reported improvements in their cognitive health. And the reason being is because the brain obviously requires fat, to function
mhm.
properly. It's a major food for
Yeah,
the brain. And for a lot of people with Parkinson's, a lot of people who specialize in Parkinson's and the science of it have actually consider Parkinson's to be type 3 diabetes, because
oh, interesting.
the brain's inability to absorb sugar as a food
Mm.
is what is contributing to the acceleration in the neurological decline. But with the medium chain triglyceride of coconut oil, it basically absorbs into the brain without sugar, without the need of sugar. So you're feeding the brain that way. So again, if you can increase omega-3, but also
Mhm.
increase coconut oil, or like
Coconut
even
oil.
MCT oil, that will help with that. And it's also anti-inflammatory. So again, you want to be looking at different ways and means that you can reduce the inflammation in your body generally, and then obviously in the brain. Um,
That's interesting. Yeah.
and yeah, but yeah, people that, again, I mean, you can look up on YouTube. You can put in, dementia and CBD, and you will find things
Yeah.
there. I've done searches. There's not a lot on there, and again, this is where there's people out there who are kind of proving it or finding it effective, but it's not being done through the post clinical science trial way, and
Yeah.
it's slowing the real sort of identity of it being effective, because there's so many different
Yeah.
circumstances you don't know about. But yeah, people with dogs as well, feeding CBD and stopping their seizures, stopping like more or less instantly and stuff. It's quite incredible. I've, knowing all of this stuff, what's been quite painful for me, to go through, is that I've got an uncle who's got, well, it's still early onset Alzheimer's, but he's got Parkinson's, but he's had other problems with his brain. And I was trying to encourage him to have CBD, years ago, because he was having
Yeah.
seizures. He had he's got a very slow growing tumor in his brain, and his family, wouldn't give it to him because they just didn't trust it was
Yeah.
coming in from the pharmaceutical industry. So, and his health has declined quite significantly. But I I have a knowing of it. I gained that through obviously the breadth of it, research I did on it, and I
Yeah.
don't care. I'm not in it to make money or anything like that. I just want to basically I want people to be able to discover it because it's just so powerful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you mentioned that there are different types of CBD. I was
yeah,
wondering
yeah.
if you could go into that a little bit.
So basically, you don't want to have CBD isolate. You want to actually have a full spectrum CBD hemp oil. Um, Full spectrum basically means that it's including all of the trace cannabinoids, and often it will have the flavonoids, which is what gives you know
Mm.
hemp and cannabis its flavor.
Yeah.
And
Is
they basically
is
work
there?
as a synergy. They together. If you The reason why it's better to go for that is there's a synergy, an entourage effect that occurs. It's like they've been,
Yeah.
that's natural in the plant. That if you take all of those proponents together, it works more effectively than just CBD on its own. So again, when they do the studies on
Hmm.
CBD, they're always doing it on the isolate, and so
Oh,
they're
yeah.
never ever going to realise the true potential of it ever. When they do it like that. So
Yeah.
because it does make a significant difference. But still, CBD in itself is obviously the most active proponent and has the most power. But actually, it's the power is enhanced greatly by obviously these other cannabinoids that are present if you have it with the full spectrum.
Yeah.
But you just look.
Is this different? Oh, is CBD? No, wait. So hemp has CBD in it. If people ate a lot of hemp seeds, would they get the same benefits?
No,
No.
but
Okay.
you would get benefits from having hemp seeds because they're rich with amino acids, and all of these things are really important for your health overall as well. Um,
Hmm.
so, I mean, again, eating hemp seeds is a good thing, but yeah, there's very, very minute, such a minute amount of actual CBD in the hemp seeds. It's mainly found in the flower and in the stem, I believe. That
Okay.
might not even be true. I don't think it's even in the stem. It's mainly in the flower and the buds and stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, when you look at a full spectrum CBD product, you just obviously look to make sure that the THC level is like minimal, like 0.03% or something like that, because
Okay.
that will have no psychoactive effect at that sort of level. Um, and usually that's kind of typical for a hemp oil, and the CBD products that come from hemp, because some, yeah, and more in America do actually grow marijuana and they extract the CBD from that. But again, the concentrations are low. So what's important is that the source that you get it from, that they have like third party test certificates of analysis on their website. And I can point you in the direction of companies that you could try. There's the company I actually buy product from is actually a company in the States. And the reason I go for their product is because it's actually it's actually rich with CBDA, which is the acid form of CBD. That's what's actually in the hemp plant before it's extracted out. But it's very unstable, and so when anyone else is extracting it, it normally turns into CBD. But they've got this uh, patented technology that basically means that it's preserving the acidity, or a large part of the acidity of the CBD molecule, so it's maintained in the actual, and that's more bioavailable. So the problem is with CBD is that it's not easily absorbed into the body. Um,
Okay.
so the different ways that you can take it, if you've smoked and you're quite comfortable with vaping, then that is more bioavailable than any other way, like that you can take it. Generally speaking, you get reportedly about 30% of the CBD when you actually vape it, versus about 15 to 16% if you take it under the tongue and hold it for about a minute
Mm,
or 2 minutes. And if you
yeah.
actually digested it, like you can get capsules of
Yeah.
CBD pills, and if you take those, you only get normally about 5% of the CBD. So
Oh
it's
wow.
all about how much you're actually getting into your body. You know,
Hmm.
it's not just about what it says on the, oh, this is a 25 milligram dose. If it's a capsule, you're
Yeah.
not really going to be getting 25% of that necessarily. But with the acidity of the one that I was like taking and have been taking, it's you know, you get more, a lot more. They say it's 10, they call it 10x pure because you're getting 10 times more for your money ultimately in terms of every dosage.
Yeah.
And I've compared it to other products, and I definitely found that it was better. You know, I definitely found different effects.
Yeah.
But you know, potentially the kind of spectrum of the cannabinoid and the oil is going to be different from one company to another. And some people have obviously taken one product and from a good company, and they didn't see any benefit from it. They tried another one, and then they got benefit from it. Now the question is did they start to get a benefit because they'd already been taking the other one, which hadn't quite taken effect yet, and then they tried another one, and their receptors were already like nourished enough to start responding to the new one. Um, but there's a lot of products out there on the market that just don't have the quantity of CBD in the product that they're claiming on the bottle. So that's why it's important to sort of find a company at least that has the sort of analysis where you can sort of see that it's been verified by a third party. It's not just something they're saying is in the bottle because you can't guarantee it. And it's also important because you know hemp is an amazing bioaccumulator in that it basically is amazing at absorbing toxins basically from the air and the soil. You know, they actually used hemp to clean up some of the nuclear spillage in Chernobyl because it's actually was
Pardon? Sorry. Did you say Chernobyl?
Chernobyl, yeah.
What about Chernobyl?
So I got your attention. So they used hemp over in Chernobyl to help clear up the nuclear waste
Oh,
there
okay.
because it absorbs.
In human bodies, or you mean
No, no,
in like,
just in the area, like just grow like hemp
oh, like planting it?
planting it. Yeah, yeah. So hemp is used often, or was used quite frequently, in between growth cycles of other crops, because where the crops obviously they're using up a lot of the nutrients from the soil, it starts to become perhaps a little bit degraded, especially if there's been pesticides used. And hemp will basically be able to neutralize the soil and actually replenish it. But in doing that, it's absorbing those toxins into the plant. You know, and so you don't want to be taking an oil potentially from somewhere that's been growing it and it's around like you know pesticide use and all that sort of stuff. So when they do the third party analysis, they're testing not just for the amount of CBD in it, but is there heavy metals in it? Is there pathogens in it? Is there you know
Yeah.
things you don't want in it? And that's important because if you get those into your body, then it's going to have a counterproductive effect and actually probably could do
Mm.
you more harm potentially. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so vaping. There was a thing that there was that occurred. I think in the states, a couple of people bought vaping products, which probably were maybe THC and CBD. I don't know, but they I don't know if it was a media propaganda thing to put people
Mm.
at one point or another. But there was someone who apparently died from having some toxins from that. You know, so
Yeah.
the company that I was getting CBD oil from, they didn't do. They used to do vaping products, but they stopped because of what was occurring there. They just decided that they didn't want to be affiliated with vaping products. The company that's very
Okay.
good is there's a company. Well, they've got a number of different companies under their umbrella, and they're actually the parent company is called Medical Marijuana Inc. Which, although it's called Medical Marijuana Inc., they're actually selling hemp products, not marijuana products.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But they're the parent company. They've got like scientific branches and arms, which are doing a lot of study on Alzheimer's and neurological conditions, and CBD being used for it and stuff. You know, and so their products are, you know, as a food supplement, you can buy their like quality products. They're really reliable, and they've had lots of like little, you know, adverts on various news companies like broadcast, you know, of people using CBD for their children with different things like
Hmm.
epilepsy or cancer and stuff, and how it's helped them. You know, so yeah, but it is quite good to take it in different ways. Some people have found, again, partly because of how it's, you know, processed in the body. So when you actually take it internally and you digest it, although you get a smaller amount of absorbency of the CBD in a, say, a pill or a capsule, you'll actually get a longer metabolism of it because it's going through the digestive tract, and so it will remain active in your system for longer than if you take it under the tongue or if you vape it. So if you vape it for anxiety, that works very well for people because they get an immediate sense of calming from vaping it because it's
Yeah.
absorbing straight away, but then it doesn't last for as long.
Mm.
I might give them,
Okay.
15 minutes, half an hour. I don't know how much
Mm-hmm.
relaxation they might get from that. But then the taking it under the tongue is the most popular way, the most common way. You get potentially about 6 hours, certainly a good 3 hours of bioavailability with that. And that's why
And
sometimes
you
it's
let
good
it,
to take it throughout the day.
yeah. So two questions. The idea is that as you take it more consistently, then your body might start to like not
Calibrate.
need it.
Not
Yeah,
need it.
okay.
Not need it. Um, well, basically, we haven't had CBD in our diets, obviously up until it came into the marketplace. Um,
Yeah.
but there is question as to whether or not an increase in health conditions is impartial contributed to the fact that it hasn't been in our diet, because apparently, in the war times where hemp was grown widely and it was grown for war effort, it used to be part of the food. It was in the food chain. Like animals were fed,
Mm,
livestock was fed
mm,
hemp seed,
mm-hmm,
and hemp grew by the side of the fields and stuff, and they would eat on it and stuff, and it would get into their fat cells, and then we would eat the meat, and that's certainly true in America and in Europe where it was grown widely for war effort, but it was actually used for war effort everywhere. It had to be used for like the sails and stuff of sail ships and for sailors' clothing and all that sort of stuff and the ropes and all the rest of it. So it was actually most likely in the food chain, generally speaking, for for maybe eons, and then it all of a
mm,
sudden went out of the food chain. And so, with many generations of not having it in the food chain, of course, our endocannabinoid system hasn't been getting stimulated. There are certain things like, even I think chocolate or cocoa can have minute amounts of cannabinoids in it, but it's such a small amount. You can get trace amounts of these things in kava and hops and stuff like that as well. So it's not
mm-hmm.
just in, but it's just found in, your supplementation's got to come from
Yeah.
it's basically.
Interesting. Interesting.
So,
My second question was like, is that are these tabs dissolvable under the tongue, or is it like a liquid, or
so mainly it's a liquid that you buy as a tincture. So I have like a little
okay.
syringe bottle, and you basically have a little squeezy thing on it, and you just basically apply your serving amount, hold it under your tongue, and just if you hold it for about 30 seconds. I normally recommend actually holding it for longer if you can, for like maybe 2 minutes or even longer. And actually, at first, you have to kind of do it consciously, but after a while, you get quite used to doing it, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
holding it in your mouth for longer. And I quite often swill it around my mouth, before I swallow the rest of it. And the reason being is because you've got receptor sites all in your mouth. You've got this sort of vein, which is under your tongue, which basically allows you to absorb a lot more of the CBD directly into your bloodstream that way. So it's not going through the digestive tract. So you'll swallow a bit of it, and so you'll get a combination of digesting a bit and also getting it absorbed
Yeah.
through your
Yeah.
mouth that way. So that's how most people generally will take it. But then a lot of people will take the balms and they'll put it on there if they've got pains and stuff. It actually that can provide relief to certain aches and pains in that area locally, like very very quickly within minutes. To some degree, it won't last necessarily for that long, but again, because our skin is our largest organ and we've got receptor sites throughout our skin, even though you're putting it outside of you, you're actually absorbing it into your body that way as well. So again, just a blanket way of taking it can actually give you more benefit potentially, or help
Yeah.
people see more of a
Yeah.
result of it. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be great to see a list of some of these products. I want to try them myself. I'd also recommend them to some people I know who are going through their own things.
Yeah, yeah. But
Might
like I
benefit
say, yeah,
greatly.
it's a case of like starting. You're introducing something new to you, So people
Mm-hmm.
say, well, is there any side effects? And if you're, are you taking drugs for your any other? Are you taking any other drugs at the moment for your condition? Or
Mm-mm.
no? Okay.
Mm,
Well,
just supplements. Mm.
there's very, very few drugs out there where there's known interactions with them because this is just basically a vitamin, more or less. Um,
Yeah.
but of course, there is a possibility that some people might not get on with it. Just like some people can be allergic to certain vitamins, like even vitamin C in some cases, or vitamin
Yeah.
A, stuff like that. So you start with a small amount and take it for a few days and just make sure that you don't have any issues with it. If you found
Right.
something, like some people have reported, oh, I felt really sleepy though when I was taking it. Well, your body probably just wanted more sleep because it needs it, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
again, you need to just kind of tune into your body with it and stuff, and just like pay attention to I would actually like kind of record like how I'm taking it and kind of try different things, like try at different times of the day. Or a lot of people would just take it, once or twice a day, like once in the morning, once in the evening. But I
Mm-hmm.
I would actually frequently take it throughout the day, especially because with anxiety, it's actually quite quick to relieve that to some degree, for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what I found as well, is that like I didn't realize I had anxiety at all before I was taking CBD, but then actually I found how I did have a level of it, but that just dissipated after I'd been taking it, because I
Yeah.
wasn't getting irritated by people on the roads as like I was, because I was more rested
Mm-hmm.
and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know well-being until you feel it, a new level of it, I suppose, or
yeah,
a
yeah.
lesser level of it.
Yeah.
It's all relative.
There's no doubt about it that it would improve your health.
Right.
And yeah,
It
it would improve your
definitely,
health
yeah.
on some degree. It can't not help you if
Mm-hmm.
unless you've got an intolerance to it, you can't take it. I'm sure it would benefit you. There was a guy as a medical doctor who was giving it to his patients with dementia.
Yeah.
He said that he found that even a small amount actually helped, like 50% of the dementia patients he was giving it to. Um, and I mean, when he was claiming even 6 milligrams a day, which was
Yeah.
that's nothing.
Oh, yeah.
6 milligrams is nothing. I mean, like I say, I was taking, and now I would probably take a minimum of 50 milligrams a day anyway, because that's generally what's
Yeah.
regarded as a decent amount for
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how I respond to it over some time. I'm so like mystified by what has happened to my body because so much is functioning fine, and yet there's so much that I can't pinpoint.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, to look at, you wouldn't be able to tell that you've got
yeah.
any health challenges.
Yeah, and that's been the challenge is like getting doctors to take me seriously because they're like, you passed the neuropsychological exam, you talk, you walk, they're like your blood tests are fine, your blood pressure is fine. Um, but there's definitely something missing that feels really big, but maybe it's like a like very small thing that's like actually shut down.
Mm.
Um,
Well, you've got neuro pathways that your brain creates for all kinds of different experiences that you've had in your past, in your life, and this is obviously like kind of trauma, And again, CBD is found effective to be good for like treating people with addiction, because it helps block that kind of constant sort of reminding, oh, right, I want to be taking that drug, or I want to be having a cigarette, or so people that wanted to give up smoking, 50% of people that wanted to give up smoking, that tried giving up smoking, taking it was taking CBD was had success at stopping, in one study that they did. So again, it's helping to repair the brain in so many different ways, and helping again with the pain, but it will help improve your sensitivity. You by taking it as well, you will be wanting to tune more and more into your body, but in a positive way, not focusing on certain things that you're not having, and which is kind of focusing on a negative element, because you're kind of thinking, oh well, I don't have that, and I used to have that. But you'll be tuning into what you're noticing, which is new, which is actually a positive thing, and just doing that is going to actually help stimulate some healing in you. Um, because again, just again, what you put your focus attention on will generate and manifest more of the same.
Well, so this is actually what the bizarre thing is. Whatever connection there is to thought and experience in my life has shut down. That's what's so strange. Like I can have like any thought could cross my mind and I have zero reaction to it. Like there is and it's that's what's really interesting to me. It's like there is these two functions are different. There are some neuroscientists lately who talk about them as if they're the same thing, like thoughts and emotions are the same, and like I can objectively say they're not. Like I
No,
have
definitely
reasoning
not.
skills. I have reasoning skills. It's a different function in the brain, at least for me. Um,
It's also a
and
physical emotion as well. You get the physical sensation of the energy
yeah,
and emotion, don't you, inside you, and how that makes you feel, and on a physical basis as well. You know.
yeah, and there's some pathway that connects the two. Um, so my next step is to like send an email out to a bunch of neuroscience PhD students and just be like, hey, this is my experience. Do you have any ongoing studies that are relevant, like that are in alignment? And um, what are your thoughts? Because I just think it's also interesting from a scientific standpoint, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I have an appointment with neurology. Uh, I don't exactly know how soon I'll be able to get in. Like I have a the referral, but
I think that you've
I'm
got.
very curious.
I
I'm
think
very curious what will show up on the scans.
I think um, that actually the fact that you've gone through what you've gone through and you're where you are now as well with it, so that you're kind of you're going in the right direction, right? But I think that actually this is a journey for you to actually be able to um, become empowered, actually also by being able to actually really improve your health, like way beyond what most would
Yeah,
you know imagine, and you're
I,
already open to
I,
that, through your own experiences that you've had before, and you're kind of what you've experienced.
yeah,
But I think
yeah. I think as much as oh, sorry, thank you for saying that. I think as much as this has changed my life, the real gift of it has been a sense of clarity about like well, about a lot of things, but about what to consider when evaluating what a worthwhile or a good life is, or what well-being is, and how to discern what is a robust path versus a path that's risky, that is set up to not be as conducive as it could be. So there's a lot of insight that I've gleaned from experiencing this.
I think though as well that I think that I mean part of your condition and your experience as well is also very much linked to your premature birth and what you experienced there, right? So
Yeah.
that actually it's a kind of apparently it was quite interesting because I had this thing that came to me. So I have things that come into me and like notions. I think about things and where those thoughts are coming from and why I get them, I don't know. But I started to think about how basically like trauma can occur to babies and stuff in their mother's womb and stuff before they're born, right?
Hmm.
So, the trauma
Yeah.
the mother's going through, etc., etc. And I thought, this is something I thought about, having sort of discovered GPMS because I was like thinking, how important it was that actually we eliminate trauma for all mothers, as well as in that new reality, because ultimately it's what's going to prevent a lot of children from having trauma, being born with trauma, and actually having issues later on in their life because of it, right? And
Having
yeah, and I came across a doctor then who just about a month or 2 months after I had that notion that was saying very specifically that again, like conditions like autism and ADHD can actually be directly linked to traumatized mothers who are given, pregnant,
Or
because the baby's shutting itself off, in whilst the mother is experiencing some trauma and pain, it's receiving that kind of that energy, that frequency from the mother, and it's got nowhere to go. It's trapped, can't get away. So
yeah,
its mechanism is to shut it off, and then that can cause it to then have autism, ultimately. Um, and I mean, obviously, what you went through in terms of being separated and not sort of having much touch and stuff in the beginning, that was a traumatic experience, of course, for you. You know, when you were
yeah.
new into this reality, and
I'm such a big advocate of mothers really taking their time before to prepare for motherhood and really honoring that period of pregnancy and then postpartum to just be able to nourish themselves as deeply as they can. Um, yeah, I think it can. I have a belief that it can be very helpful. I mean, it's just really interesting to even look at my brother, for example, who's 4 years younger than me, who was born, I believe he was born late, if not late, like definitely 40 weeks. And my mom was in bed in like a really cozy maternal, like not a hospital. She was in like a maternal birthing center in a rural area in Japan. She was like filled with beautiful people and she didn't have to worry about like doing anything really. She just had to rest and take care of her body and play with me for like the hour or two that I visited her. And my brother is such a happy, peaceful, well-adjusted, rational guy. Like he's just really played his cards well in life. Like um he's just had a very yeah, he's a I think a very great example of compare like to use as a comparison for what his birthing experience was like. He was such a deep sleeper as a baby too. And would just like be alone for hours. Not alone, like we were in the room with him as he was a baby, but he would just be hanging out in his little baby play area, unbothered. And it's very interesting to have seen how he's grown into an adult. Um,
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 30.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Like, look at
Yeah.
you saying that you you have issues with.
Yeah, I have a baby face.
Same.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I grew up. I mean, I'm 44 now, so
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
my earlier part of life, I was always like looking much younger than my age. Uh,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Starting to
It
catch on.
pays off later in life, I suppose.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's a lot to
Yeah.
be said about, again, diet and things like that that actually will slow the process, and
Mm-hmm.
metabolism and movement and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I was going to
Mm-hmm.
say for you, I definitely you're now you kind of again want to look at sort of where you can try to sort of find out what you might be deficient in. But apart from that side, it's your sleep improvement is the key thing to focus on, sleep hygiene, because that is so important. And and then obviously, yeah, with that again, obviously the CBD is going to help with that. It'll help with other things as well. But then
Yeah.
um, yeah, and just I know that you've never had meat before. You've not really eaten meat, but have you ever kind of? I mean, have you looked at like? Have you sort of researched or looked into? Some people find that the only thing that helped them with their body and their problems was doing a carnivore diet.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. And honestly, since I can't feel disgust, I should probably give it a go. It's kind of a foreign thing for me, which is why I just haven't tried it. But I could probably eat a burger and
See, a burger though is more processed, so yeah,
oh, okay.
what you want is to go if you can afford it and you can do it. Organic meat and beef is good, and with the fat, because that's where all of the nutrients that the animal's eating get stored.
Yeah.
If you're eating that,
I
I don't know if you
yeah.
don't like fat and stuff anyway, that puts you off or
I
anything.
just I've never eaten steak before. Like that was the one thing in my life that I just could not fathom or stomach. I've had like liver, not liver, sorry, pork,
Oh,
a pork chop
oh, pork
before.
chops.
That was the closest thing to a steak that I've had.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Porks. You say pork. I mean, whilst I mean, again, you
I've
get
heard
the
the pork
nutrition.
is not great, but
Well, it's what they feed the animal. I mean, they probably feed it corn seeds,
yeah,
stuff like that. So
okay.
you want to get grass-fed, finished, uh, organic beef, and eat that. And
Mm,
again, you need to make sure you eat enough of it as well. But
yeah,
the thing is that you can get all more or less all of the nutrients you need from meat and fish and eggs and stuff like
yeah.
that. You can't get all of the nutrients from vegetables and fruits. You have to supplement.
That's yeah. It's so that's the well, I have two different directions I wanted to kind of speak about, but I'm so like flabbergasted actually by the raw fruit community and raw vegan community, um, because it's just so hard. I'm like wondering what it is that's making these people feel better. Maybe some bodies really are more compatible to that diet. I don't know, but like to me, it seems like there is uh there are nutrients in these other in like in animal products that are so nourishing for our bodies, and maybe some of them cause inflammation, but I keep thinking that there's got to be just like something else you can do to help the inflammation and,
Mm,
and still I don't know, it's like there's just like the raw vegan and raw fruit world is uh I mean it's very cultish, you know, these people are like so certain that their diet is the ideal diet for all of humans, and it's like um it's interesting but also like I you know it's kind of dangerous also.
But again, as well, again, we don't know how much the power of the body is. Like if you really truly believe what you're putting into your body is really
Mm,
good for you, how much you're energizing that food, to give you what you need, actually, as well. So I mean, but people are different, as well. So you can't say that everything's going to be the same for everyone. But
yeah,
yeah, I at this point, because I don't have a sweet tooth and I'm limited, and I would love to be able to eat fruit and more vegetables, but it just doesn't do anything for me at all. And I could actually very happily just eat more or less meat only, and eggs and fish.
well, yeah,
But I don't, I do, and I do eat carbs, but again, reducing carbs, and only having certain types of carbs is obviously important as well. Um,
hmm,
but yeah, we've only got like 1 minute 45. I was just going to say very, very quickly, if I just share my screen, I just wanted to show you this very quickly. Do you see that? Um,
yes.
this is a patent that I was talking about. Cannabis,
Oh, okay, yeah.
antioxidants, and neuroprotectants, and it just says here again. Neuroprotectants, for example, in limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults such as stroke and trauma, or in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, HIV, dementia, etc.
Mm,
So, and that was the US patent. It's awarded in the US in 2003 or something. There you go, grant date. So there is evidence
yeah,
out there. There is stuff there, and you could obviously do more research and watch things
hmm,
on YouTube if you wanted to, and find people that talk about their experiences. It does help when you see that there's. I mean, now, I mean, I don't know if there's likely to be some people that might say, oh, I tried it and it didn't do anything for me. But then most people that are trying it aren't really understanding how it works, aren't using it properly. That's for sure.
yeah,
But we're going to cut out any moment. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
yeah,
And so I go off at a bit of a tangent when I'm talking about CBD, because it's very information packed, and it's like difficult
hmm,
for me to kind of sort of deliver it in a different way when I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have. But
yeah,
we can have a follow up at any point, and I can talk to you more about glutathione and stuff and things like that as well.
yeah. Sure, yeah, that would be great. Thanks for taking the time today to speak to me and share all this info. It's been really interesting, and I'm definitely gonna